Welcome to You Are Intuitive. I am honored to have your presence as I host candid, intimate, and grounded conversations with some of my favorite people around developing and using intuition in the real world. I am Dana Mahacek, and my guest today is Jillian Anderson. Jillian is a writer, healer, and business strategist who has studied and practiced women's health, spiritual healing, plant spirit medicine, and ancestral healing extensively with leading experts. She is a certified abdominal massage specialist, body worker, and energy healer with advanced training in mind-body medicine. In addition to her deep foundations in mind-body medicine, Jillian has studied and practiced the art of coaching, heart-based business principles, and has discovered the healing shifts required to create freedom and fulfillment in a spirit-led business. Today, she offers one-on-one mentorship opportunities, as well as Permission to Prosper, her signature online training program that explores the intersection between sacred sexuality and money magnetism. I am privileged to have worked with Jillian before, as well as to call her my friend. I am so excited to chat with her today about intuition, and I hope that you enjoy hearing this conversation. Hey Jillian, so awesome to have you here today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dana. I'm excited too.
You were one of the people that I was like super excited to talk with about intuition, because I know, just based on my own experience with your work, how focused you are on the body and on like getting really into your physical body as a practice, as like a devotional way to tap into yourself. So I'm really looking forward to all of the insights and perspectives you have to share with people about intuition as this like physical, grounded, tangible practice.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So to start out with, I'll like reel it back a little bit. And I like to ask people at the beginning, do you consider yourself to be an intuitive person?
Yes, I do. I do.
You sound like a question mark there. I do?
I do, because when I sit across from someone like you, I notice there's a separation in how I consider myself intuitive, and maybe because it's your professional intuitive, and I have other friends who are professional intuitives and it's blended into their work. So I do consider myself intuitive, yes. And I feel like my intuition, I don't necessarily have to tap in for my clients, although it happens naturally in certain ways. But yes, yeah, I do consider myself intuitive.
And you bring up a really interesting point with that idea of separation, that there's like a difference between being intuitive and being unintuitive, right? Like having intuitive be a professional title or like a label that you would put on your website or your business cards.
Yeah. I think I'm seeing the separation as we're exploring that question. I'm seeing the separation between like intuition here, like right here, and intuition in other places, like felt intuition.
Felt intuition. And do you feel, because I know a lot of people who will be watching this and listening to this, that there's like it's not just a difference, but there's like an evaluation that like being unintuitive is somehow better than just being like regular intuitive. Do you feel that, or have you felt that before, that there's like one is better than the other?
I think that there's this general feeling that intuitive sense here is better or is more in some way than intuition, maybe for instance from your gut, from like a gut feeling. Maybe there is that sense that but yeah.
Do you feel, because I found that was like a barrier for me claiming the label of like, I am intuitive, and declaring, hell yeah, I actually am intuitive, because I felt like professional intuitives had like access to things that I somehow wasn't able to tap into, or that like I wasn't a part of this like really super mystical club. But I always had, like, I could always feel in my gut and in my heart, like I was always really sensitive to energies and emotions down here. But for anybody watching, let's talk about intuition in your gut and how it's just as valid and just as legitimate and just as powerful as like up here intuition. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had particular experiences in your life that you could share about having those gut instincts and like feeling intuition really strongly in your body?
Yes. So as we were first talking, I was thinking about it was 2012. I was in Guatemala. I was in Lake Atitlan. I was traveling with a friend, and we had traveled from Belize with our teacher, Rosita Arvigo. We were there for a week, and we were doing spiritual healing with plant spirit bathing and just traditional the Maya lineage. And it was during Holy Week, and I was like holy. I was bathed. I was renewed. I was just like this lightness of my being, this joy came through. It was right before I had my son actually, but I was just this new human. And we left that like sanctuary of my teacher's place, where there was the ylang ylang tree, and there was just all these herbs and the ceiba trees, and we went and we traveled into Guatemala, and that was like a rude awakening, because we went from like sanctuary, like paradise, to like Guatemala City on a bus. Like we took a night bus. That was a terrible thing, and that's a whole different story. But we ended up in Lake Atitlan, and I was exhausted from being car sick from all the switchbacks, and so my girlfriend was like, why don't we schedule massages? Like, why don't we schedule some healing? And, it sounded like the right thing to do. It sounded like I'm tired. My body is kind of like jarred from this experience. A healing sounds really good. Let me try to get back to that holy place, clean place, or refreshed, whatever that was, It was like I was trying to recreate that feeling. But, so it sounded like a good thing to do, book these massages. And so we did. We booked these massages with this Maya healer. He was a man, and he was right in, I think it was San Marcos, but I think it was San Marcos. But don't quote me on that, because there's a couple little towns that sound similar.
Yeah.
And he had this little place, and we booked massages. She actually booked a hike with him into the jungle or up the volcano. The three sister volcanoes are there. And that was later in the next day. And I booked a massage for the next morning. So just the whole thing felt weird. The whole thing, from the moment we went there and we started making the appointments, we were talking to the man's wife. The man wasn't really there yet. We made the appointments with his wife. The whole setup that he had, like he was doing the healings in his yard. And something in my gut was like, no, you don't need this. Like, you don't have to, you don't need this. And my body was like, you don't need this. And my mind was like, but you're tired and you could use a massage. Like, you just had a rough trip. You should have a massage. So there was this immediate like feeling in my body, like, no, you don't need this. And this thought in my mind of, you do. So we went back to the place that we were staying and we went to sleep for the night. We had dinner, went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and everything in my body was so heavy. My body was like lead weight, dragging. I couldn't really get out of bed. Even just getting ready felt like so much. There was no ease. There was no flow. There was no energy pushing me in that direction or pulling me in that direction. Everything was actually, in fact, keeping me where I was, trying to, but I willed my way forward with my mind. I willed myself up. I willed myself breakfast. I willed my shoes on, and I willed myself across the town. And I remember I walked through this church, like, they were doing construction on this big open lot. It was this church. There was like a big open place where you could worship. And I was walking across it, and there were cinder blocks everywhere. And I was like, I feel like my feet are cinder blocks. Like, it was like that apparent. Like, my feet were just like, no. And I knowed across the town and all the way to receive that healing. And I got there, and it wasn't long after that I was on the table that I realized why my body was a no and my intuition was a no. And he, I won't go into detail, but I was molested by this man. And I felt like I was held down by some kind of power that he had. It was a very interesting experience. I felt like I was almost controlled by some kind of invisible power that he had, but everything in my body was a no, all the way from even from the beginning, all the way to that experience. And then of course there was I got away. That was a process. I got away. I ended up finding my friend. She was in not a sweat lodge, but like in a little clay sauna place. I found her. I went through shock. I went through all of the shock. And then I started to understand. And it wasn't until, weeks and months unraveled that I was really able to see, my body was like, no. And my mind was like rationalizing, yes, go get a massage. Yes, go see this healer. But I didn't have a good feeling about it. And I didn't feel like a yes in my body. And so now I would say not everybody needs to have such a bad experience. I'm saying bad, that's so relative, right? Like, that experience was supposed to happen. It's weird to say that, but for whatever reason, I don't quite understand what the reason is beyond understanding that my body is my guide, my wise guide, my intuitive friend, knows all the answers, knows what's a yes and knows what's a no. And I so listen to my body when it says no, because I know it's my friend and it's telling me, so I'm like very much committed and devoted to listening to those instincts and those body feelings. So,
and it could be that like the lesson of it or the reason for that was to give you like a really, really clear, obvious example of what your no feels like. And also like evidence or proof of like what can happen if you don't acknowledge your no in like a really extreme way that your mind can't argue with after that.
No, my mind can't argue. My mind's got nothing on my body now. And my mind is my good friend too. And there's like this, but there's this thing, it's like you have to surrender those thoughts, those rationalizations, those kinds of thoughts to the intuition, to the instinct, to the knowing, and then there's this harmony. So
yeah, because it's not, I find like when I was gonna say becoming intuitive, but I believe we all are already intuitive. But when I was first consciously stepping into my intuition, it was like a pendulum swing where like before I had been like only my mind, and then after I was like, I'm only going to use my intuition, and I kind of like rejected logic and reason for a while, and that also didn't work out so well, right? Like you have to kind of have that balance, like you say, and have that harmony between like checking in with yourself first, and then having that logic and that reason play a supporting role and kind of flesh it out, or add details or nuances that maybe the intuitive feelings can't flesh out in the same way that your mind can.
Yes. And I think what you're describing is something that the way that I'll say that is that the feminine informs the masculine. In that Shakti or our intuition or these instinctual knowings lead the way. And you said the word support, for the mind to support the intuition. And I think that's the masculine role, as it is to support and to carry out and to sustain and to act upon those intuitions. And so when we can see that operating in ourselves, we can see oh, this is how this is playing out, or this is going to click, or we can get a better idea about where to act and what to act upon, and kind of how to move through life.
Yeah, with the dialogue between the two, right? The masculine and the feminine and the masculine. What sort of practices do you have now to check in with your body? Like, how do you go about your day, listening to yourself and like tapping into your intuition?
It's a great question. I feel like I have gotten to a place where I really don't take action unless it's inspired. And there are, of course, actions that have to be taken, but I feel like I'm led by those inspired, like, ooh, this feels good, or this is, I'll use the word luminescent, because sometimes things actually appear shiny or like different or like intriguing or whatever it is. There's curiosity, there's a feeling, there's like something I'll see. So I go on that inspired feeling. But as far as checking in with my body and tuning in, I feel like basic things, like for me, movement, like running, exercising, like having that time where my body's just in this like consistent motion, where it's almost like wind is moving through me and I'm just moving, and I feel like in that instance things are kind of removed that don't need to be there. It's almost like shaking, like a duck shakes its feathers or something. And then I feel like my practice since becoming a mother isn't as regular as most people's devotional meditation practice. You know, I feel like I check in not as consistently as I did as far as a meditation practice, but that I will do at night. I'll actually sit on a cushion. It depends on what I'm doing, and like there's a lot of flexibility there. And then I think my intuition comes through morning pages for me. I think that's my biggest, even though that's not like a physical body type of thing. I literally feel like my body is still, and I just receive information through the top of my head down through into my hand, and it just comes. And so that's kind of like that's my most consistent practice, is morning pages. So
well, and I'm so glad that you brought up this idea of like consistency and regularity, because I think a lot of us put pressure on ourselves. Like, if I'm not able to sit in lotus position for an hour every day, then like, why even bother having some kind of a practice? Or like, I'm just not able to make the time to check in. But anything is better than nothing, right? And it doesn't have to look a certain way in order to like count or qualify as a practice, or as devotion, or as checking into yourself. So I'm really glad you brought that up, especially for all the parents who are watching or just like, I've got kids. I don't have time to sit in lotus for an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as you were talking, I was thinking about the jade egg practice too. I was thinking, oh, how did I forget about the jade? But I'll use the jade egg practice too to connect more deeply with my body. And that's something that really slows me down. Because it takes time, you know, you have to prepare for it. And it's this process. It's not just like a sit down and then, you know, sit down and you're in, you're out type thing. It takes a little bit longer. But yeah, I'm glad it's true what you said, because why do we do that to ourselves? Like, if I can't sit for an hour, well, I think too, I can really relate to that, because I'm kind of like an all or nothing person with my stuff. Like, I'm all in, or I'm like, forget everything. Yeah. And then I like go on a hiatus, like a break. But there's moments throughout my day where I'm like, to me now, I think as a mother, it's like, even just making my tea is like enough. It's like enough to just make my tea in silence and like have my tea. It's enough for me. So I don't hold on so rigidly the way I used to meditation in particular. But
yeah, I was speaking with another parent. She's got 2 young boys, and before, she's like a yoga teacher and would have like, had to be up at a certain time and would do like a certain amount of yoga. It had to be on her mat. And then now she's got these boys, and she's like, good luck even like putting my foot on the mat because it just doesn't happen. But finding ways to have a practice and giving yourself permission that this counts as a practice.
Yeah.
You know? That's really helpful.
Yeah. I put my yoga mat out and it's covered in dirt, like all this. He'll take like dirt from the plants in the house and like put it on the mat. He'll spill. I'm like, what's the point of rolling out my mat? It's actually a ramp for a car, or like, but anyway, yeah. It's so important.
Yes. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about the morning pages practice that you do, and how you like receive downloads or receive insights that come out and come through. First of all, for people who aren't familiar with morning pages, can you just explain what that process is?
Yeah. So morning pages were popularized by the author Julia, unless it's Julie, but I think it's Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way. She's authored so many books. And The Artist's Way is this creativity as spiritual path and creativity as this spiritual growth. And it's so much more than that. But morning pages is when you sit down in the morning with your 3 pages, your journal, and it doesn't have to be a fancy journal. It's better if it's just straight up paper that you can toss or file or do whatever you want to do with. But you sit down and you just write. There's no censorship. There's no goal. There's just sitting down and writing. And so you don't stop. According to Julia's way, you don't stop until you've completed 3 pages, and you can continue on. All of my business ideas, everything I've ever created has come through in morning pages. And that's how I know it's solid, and that's how I know it's going to work and it's aligned. And before you hit the gold of like the idea or the realization or the thing, you have to write all of the stuff you're thinking about that's blocking you. So my morning pages are throw-outable, because most of it, 98% of it is like, I am worthy, like 100 times, or like I'm whatever, like I'm writing, I'm like worthy, I'm good enough, or like just like things that I want to tell myself, or don't forget, and then it turns into a to-do list. Don't forget to do this, and make sure you do that, and don't forget to call this person, or whatever. It starts turning into this big list. And then I'll keep going. You got to go through all this mind stuff. It's just like meditation. You're going through the chatter, you cut through, and you get to this thing. All of a sudden you're writing an article or something. You're like, what happened? You get to the end of your morning pages and you're like, oh, look, it's magic. It happened again. Like always something, I shouldn't say always something comes through, but I always at least get like a lead on what to do with my day or where to spend my time. Sometimes like a straight up article will come through or a blog post. Sometimes an idea for Permission to Prosper, the program, came through Morning Pages. Like it all just comes through. You just have to get through the mind chatter.
And for you personally with that, how long were you doing Morning Pages before you started seeing that gold come through? Like, was it day one, or was it month one, or year one? How long did it take to kind of like strip out the layers of that chatter for you?
That's a great question. And I feel like I've been doing Morning Pages my whole life, but didn't know.
Okay.
So I had no idea really that this was a practice, that people did this. There was a certain way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a journal and a pen with me wherever I go, and it's part of my process, and it's part of who I am to write everything, to write things down, and to, but with that said, I would say I've only officially been doing Morning Pages for maybe a year and a half or 2 years. And so it doesn't take long. It doesn't really take long to cut through. I think someone could cut through in one session. I think you cut through the mind chatter in just a couple minutes, and then you start getting to something deeper. So it's like, yeah.
And I also want to kind of specify that if somebody starts, if Morning Pages resonate with them and they're like, I'm going to try it, you don't have to feel bad or beat yourself up if you don't have this like winning lottery ticket number idea at the end of like your first session, right? Like, oh, I must not be very good if I like didn't solve world poverty after the first day.
Yeah. And you know what, that's like with Dana, with any practice, it's like, it's just showing up and being curious. And so it's not meant to produce a result necessarily. It's supposed to just anchor you into something deeper or help you feel clear. Like that's the main thing that I feel is like a clarity and a sense of direction. And so you're right, it doesn't have to be this like total shiny thing.
Clouds parting.
But don't be surprised if there is one of those. Like that's really, really good. It's a powerful practice. So
I also, one of the things in your description of that practice that really resonated with me was the idea of just using like regular loose leaf paper, like not like a good journal, because I find I have like separate notebooks, and I only like to write certain things in certain notebooks. And for me, like a Morning Pages practice, it wouldn't be like good enough or clean enough or profound enough to like write in my good journal, but I could just write it on a piece of loose leaf and throw it away if it wasn't worthy of posterity.
Yes, I have one of them right here. I'm going to grab one.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what I do. I order these in packs of 12. They're just, you just rip the page off. And the cool thing about it is you rip the page off and then it's done and you're on a new one. And it doesn't matter what shows up on the page. Like I feel the same way as you. Like Morning Pages definitely doesn't belong in a nice journal because 90% of it is just all this stuff. But then what I do is actually, it's really nice. And I know that you do similar things to this. I go through and systematically burn what the Morning Pages. I make sure I got anything that looked important or looked like I needed to maybe expand on it, or an idea that I didn't, whatever. I pull that page out, I put it in a folder, and I burn. Because if we did this for our lives, we'd be sitting in a room in a house full of thousands of notebooks.
I'm like, don't forget to call this person. Yeah. And you're like, why am I holding on to that?
Yes.
And that is also just to pick up on that idea of burning it, because when I first started, again, just consciously being intuitive, there was still a part of me that had this fear that there was like, that I would run out of insights, or I would run out of ideas, or that like I would somehow fully tap into, like I would mine the vein of my intuition completely, and then it would like run dry. And now when I am, because I do systematically burn lots of things, and not just like scrap things, but sometimes I actually like to put something in that I'm like, oh, this is good, or like this is really valuable to me. I will add that to my burn pile. And as I'm burning it, my mantra is there's always more where that came from. That like, I don't have to hoard anything, or I don't have to like scrounge and scrimp and like save ideas physically, because they'll be there, whether it's that particular thing or something else. Like there is an infinite supply of intuition, there's an infinite supply of ideas, and I don't need to like worry about like I better save that just in case. And for me, kind of like recovering from that just in case philosophy has been one of the most liberating things ever. Like I was holding on to things before from like junior high and elementary school, and I was like, I'm done with that. I'm just done. I don't need to hold on to that anymore just in case.
Yes, I am big on getting rid of the things, and it's, yeah, I can sense your power in saying I don't need this. There's more where that came from. There's more where that came from. And that's generally how I approach the morning pages too, is like there's always more, you know? So when I go to burn everything or burn whatever I'm burning, it is most of it getting burnt. And it's this refreshing thing because you're like, there's renewal, right? Okay. Yeah. Fresh air, space.
Definitely. Let's talk about space as it relates to intuition. How do you create space in your body, in your mind, in your environment to be able to tap in to yourself?
So space for me starts in the physical environment. And I'm always in this funny place. And you know that my partner, Aaron, is more of like he's got things to give to people and he's hanging on to things. And so we have this joined life, and I'm like the one who's like, burn it, just get rid of it, let's donate it now, or like let's, you know. And there's been so many occasions where even our furniture, I've been like, I don't want this, we don't need it.
And he's like, oh my God, we do need that.
And let me tell you, we don't have a dining room table because I was like, I don't like this table and I don't want it here. And so we like made space by getting rid of it. And we still, because we haven't gotten a new one yet, there's still like, when we go to sit to eat somewhere, I'm like, where do you want to sit? Where do you want to eat? And he's like, well, we don't have a table. I'm like, oh.
Just to remind you, we don't have a table.
So funny.
Because of you.
Because I want to really like the table. So if I don't like it, I'm like, it's got to go. But anyway, that's a side note. But I think space starts for me in my physical environment. And so I'm very much systematic about no clutter, at least as far as my own stuff goes, no clutter. And what I can manage, that is mine. I'm like, I don't want clutter. And I feel like that kind of opens up mind space for me in some way. Like it's kind of this process of, once I've kind of assessed what's around in the office or wherever, I'm like, oh, okay, there's space. And then, well, how do I create space in my body? I think that it starts in the environment, and then space in my body comes from movement. From running, like I was saying earlier, from being outside in the forest. Space in my body comes from having my shoulders back, and I think space in my body comes from unstructured time off and body work, massage, getting a massage, acupuncture. Space comes from things like that, like self-care. I would say the running is probably the most consistent source of space for me in my body right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's just reminding me of something that you had mentioned on like your first Permission to Prosper call last year sometime, that our issues are in our tissues. And I know that that's probably not your original quote, but that was the first time I had ever heard that. And I wrote it down in like big block letters. And now every time, if I'm receiving a massage or if I'm receiving some kind of body work, I use that time to, well, A, to enjoy it, but like B, to actually visualize my issues being like kneaded out, or being like coming up to the surface and being swept off my body. And so I like amplify the body work with my mind, with my visualizations, to like any issues, any physical or energetic congestion that I'm holding on to. Now's your chance to like come up out of the tissues and be worked out and worked through to create that space. And so I always think of you every time I'm getting a massage too. I'm like, my issues are in my tissues. Thanks, Jillian.
I love it. I could talk for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe even more, about like how to properly receive body work, because I was doing body work for so long that, you know, when you're in that space of being in the giving place and you're giving body work and you can see someone not making the most out of it, or like they're tense, or like they're holding on, I have all these running notes about that. But yes, I love, and the most powerful body work that I've received has been from using my mind to do exactly what you described. So you partner, your mind partners with your body to allow it to be a deep healing experience.
Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier, how the feminine informs the masculine, that it is like this dance and this conversation between both of the elements. And body work, I find, because it is a really receptive process when you're not when you're giving the massage, obviously, but like when you're receiving it, but then having that extra layer, whether it's a visualization or whether it's just an affirmation that like I am making space in my body, that can really, really boost things, I find.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it can lead to insights too, and just getting downloads and seeing things you need to see. It can lead to so much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I just want to reiterate for the people who are tuning into this, I love the idea how, because I believe everything is connected and interrelated, and even things that don't seem like they would apply to, say, becoming more intuitive in this case, even though it doesn't make sense logically that like if I declutter my desk, I can be more intuitive, like that doesn't compute. And yet it does, like in practice, like any practice of making space on any level of your life, whether it's physical clutter, whether it's, you know, doing something like tapping to get the emotional clutter out, or mental clutter, doing morning pages, all of that space clearing, it creates a vacuum where something new can come in, whether that's something new physically or something in the form of like an intuitive insight. I love that you highlighted the fact that like getting rid of your dining room table can be like a source of like, I'm just making room, I'm making space for whatever needs to come through next.
Yeah.
Really reassuring and just like really refreshing that it doesn't have to be this like super profound mystical thing that you're doing. You could just like go through the pile of mail on your countertop, but having that intention, I am creating space, is what creates the space.
Yeah, and I feel like I know that you do this, Tina, but I feel like it makes your life so much more fun and profound. Like when your day-to-day reality, when you're infusing it with your intention, like for instance going through the mail, all of a sudden you're really connected to that, because you're like, oh, this is a process that I have to go through because it's in my physical environment, which means it's actually just a reflection of my energy body, right? Going through this is actually a part of my path here, and it's not separate. It's very much showing me something, all of this. And so it just becomes more fun because everything leads to whatever path you're on. It's all taking you there, everything, even the mail on the counter. Yeah. So
totally. And like, that reminds me, I do have mail on the counter. That's like probably my intuition being like, remember, you've got mail on the counter. So if people are just starting on the path of, tapping into their intuition, or tapping into their body, what are specific practices or recommendations that really helped you that you can like share with other people to strengthen their connection with themselves?
Well, the first thing I'm thinking about is women and men not honoring or not being, I'm not going to say conditioned, but not being taught how to honor their root voices and their gut instincts and the instinctual knowing that comes from the gut, that comes from, the lower chakras. So my first thought was connecting with the root and connecting with the sacral chakra. And that can be done in many ways. But the way that I work with women in teaching them the jade egg practice, and I do that in relationship to abundance and creativity and, dharma, but even just like connecting, something as simple as holding your hands to your root chakra and your sacral chakra, even something as simple as that, and just putting your awareness there for a few minutes and thinking, giving that area of your body a voice, like, what do you have to say today and what's going on here? And then I think in the beginning, it can be kind of odd. Like you might think, oh, this is weird. Like my root chakra can talk to me, like my, this is odd, but it's not. It's actually just like, it's almost like I see this with a lot of people. It's like there's this lack of a bridge between our right here and our gut. And it's like, and I'm talking like root, sacral, and even solar plexus. Like there's just this there's this lack of a bridge. And so I think just even by just putting your hand on your root chakra and like saying, hi, what do you have to say? And then like sacral chakra, hi, and then I think over time that bridge forms. And then it's like messages can just go toot, 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 and like walk back and forth anytime they want. It's like, once you create the bridge, now you're aware messages are coming from here. And so the pathway's open. So,
and do you feel, because when you're saying that, I got this like little ping of some people feeling like kind of crazy about that, like wondering if they were just like making something up. Like say they put their hands over their root chakra and they're like, how are you today? And then whatever's coming up for them, like instantly second guessing it or instantly discrediting it or being like, I'm just making that up and I feel really foolish doing this. What sort of advice would you give to people who are like, oh, it's easy for Jillian to do because she's a professional body worker, or like she does this for a living. It's easy for her to be so tapped in, but like, I'm just like an ordinary person and I feel crazy talking to my root chakra.
What would I say to that person? I would say, like, let the voice just be heard and don't judge the voice. And even if it sounds nuts or like you made it up, just like, all right, that's how you are today. Great. And just give it a chance and then judge it later. I don't know. Maybe throughout the day, you'll realize, oh, that voice was like talking to me. But if you discount it right away, you're not going to see whatever could be seen. I can relate to that. I feel like there's times where I still do that, and it might not necessarily be with my body. It might be like whenever it's more mind oriented, when I'm asking
Yeah.
questions and I'm just asking questions and then answers are coming and I'm like, really? Is that the answer? Is that the answer?
Yeah.
But
Give me another sign.
can I have another answer? Yeah. Can I get this on paper? That's how I need it. But yeah, I would say just give the voice a voice. Don't judge it. Let it speak. Go about your day. And it might be hard to let that be a valid voice, but just why not try it out?
Yeah.
Keep trying it out. See what happens.
Yeah. And then also connected to that, once again, just this idea that your root chakra might not impart some like transformational insight in this like booming angelic voice on day one, right? So not expecting anything of it really, like that it doesn't have to, there being no like end goal, that like unless it says this, I'm not going to think it's real. Right?
Yes. And I think that it's just making space for the voice of intuition to come in whatever way that it comes. And then like walking through your day and being aware of other affirmative signs. I mean, if one piece of information comes in one way, and then you're walking around and something else comes in and it's like it's almost like these little things build on one another. It's not always that there's this one lightning bolt, it's like
Yeah.
little tiny things happen and you see something, or somebody says something, or you see a number, or you get a feeling, so I think everything builds.
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to add one final thing to that practice, because I love the idea of something as simple as just like putting your hands over a chakra and being like, hey, how's it going today? And initiating that dialogue. Because I am somebody who, like, I love ritual. I love invocations is what I love. Like speaking things into existence and like commanding things into my space in a really intentional way. So, because I am going to start talking to my root chakra and my sacral chakra that way by putting my hands over them, but actually like declaring beforehand, I release all expectations, and I'm open to hearing or feeling or receiving whatever comes up or whatever comes through, and not needing it to be a specific thing or to look a certain way, and setting that intention prior to that is how I'm going to customize that little practice for myself. And if anybody else wants to do that, you're welcome to borrow that.
I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights, Jillian, and for just making intuition this like real thing, this like everyday accessible structure that all of us have built into our bodies already. I really appreciate you being here and having this conversation.
I really appreciate you too, Dana. I'm so excited to be here. It's been so great to connect with you. And yes, I trust that what we shared was what was needed. So thank you.
And if people wanted to learn more about your work or find you online, where's the best place for them to do that?
So I can be found on my website, which is www.jillian-anderson.com. And that's Jillian has a J and Anderson is O-N at the end. So Jillian-Anderson.com. And then on Instagram is my favorite. It is at Jillian A. Anderson. So the double A there can be tricky, but it's Jillian A. Anderson. And yeah.
That's awesome. And like to people who are watching or listening, your Instagram is so awesome. I highly, highly recommend people checking that out, because it is just like this, a really grounded, really sacred, really devotional space. I love your Instagram.
Thank you, Dana. Likewise. Likewise. Totally.
Mhm.
I think those of us who are on Instagram know it's almost like, I don't know, we get to curate and show up and be intentional and share what we've got. And it's so fulfilling and to show up there.
It's the
So,
best place on the internet, I find, Instagram.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll put the links to your website and your Instagram below. And I just want to say thank you again so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Jillian.
You too.